I think a case could be made that that's likely. A case could be made that most of the people who haven't dropped out at this point, their odds of becoming president by getting the most delegates haven't changed today because they were 0 yesterday and they're 0 today. The path is, in terms of it being handed to them. I would say that if we're looking at what effect this will have on someone's odds of dropping, I think that the best person to watch is probably Tom Steyer, who, like Biden, put a lot of his resources into this state. He's polled well there for a couple of months. We don't have the numbers yet. If he significantly underperformed, perhaps that would drive him out, especially because it seems really unlikely that if we were to get to a contested convention and they decided to hand the nomination to someone, I don't know why it would be Tom Steyer, and I think Tom Steyer is probably rational enough to come to that same conclusion.
Certainly, he's rational enough, but I think we're always underplaying the amount that ego plays into the desire of people to stay in, and they have staffs and they've raised millions of dollars in many cases, and they're just like, I have this cash on hand, I'm gonna keep going until it's run out. And that's kind of the way things are done, even though there's no realistic chance. We're seeing that with Elizabeth Warren, to be honest. We're seeing that, I think, with Amy Klobuchar. And we're seeing that with Tom Steyer. But the thing about Steyer is it's a different scenario when you're a billionaire and he doesn't really have any stake in the game. He may, he's not holding elected office. So I think Steyer is the #1 draft pick for who could drop out tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could see Steyer definitely staying in because it's like the battle of the ego for the billionaire. Right. And who's more likely to drop out, even though if they get no delegates whatsoever, whether it be Bloomberg or Steyer, it's an unfortunate game. But I could also really see Klobuchar and Warren staying in the race, just really, really gutting it out. And because we've seen Warren change her tune in terms of these PACs and collecting money and really just doing what by any means necessary to make this happen.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people will say, hey, I'll do what I have to.
Okay, so things like that with Elizabeth Warren and her change of tune on the super PACs. And also the story coming out that she's begging them to release the names of the people in the super PAC, and the super PAC says, hey, get out of here. First of all, I think those types of things have an ability to hinder her more than John mentioned Joe Biden's issue with admitting that he wasn't actually arrested, going to see Mandela. And I feel like it's part of the voting bloc. It's part of, and I don't mean to connect Joe Biden to Donald Trump to this degree, but Trump voters will hear and see things that he does and be like, yeah, it's okay, because that's my guy. Actually, yeah, it's okay. They'll find some excuses that whether or not they make sense or not to just let that slide. Many of Elizabeth Warren's supporters will see that and go, oh my God, this is not who I thought you were. And the abandonment happens immediately and swift, as Emma saw during the week, and to the degree to which the anger comes from it. So, I think her change of pace, or something that surprised many of her voters, is potentially more harmful than Joe Biden saying, oh yeah, by the way, I was just kind of detained, or they told me to stay out of this barrier, not actually arrested.
It's a good point. I think a lot of her support's already gone because she's backtracked on a lot of these progressive pillars in a way that Bernie Sanders hasn't. And the people that remain, I feel like, honestly, are just Yas Queen identity politics, female voters who don't really care if she takes money from a super PAC. And that's why she's polling so low, because if you don't have ideological support behind you, it's really hard to have a firm base that's gonna carry you into these elections. What is her base anymore? She's leaned into just bland feminism without teeth. I can say this because I'm a woman, right? So
not really, but go ahead.
But seriously, I don't think it's like boring elitist feminism when she's actually a progressive at heart, and that doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, I don't know necessarily that she does the elitist feminist angle, and I would say that mainstream media, in terms of tempering the amount of coverage that she gets, and really kind of that's been hindering her significantly, because it's like she's absent, and we saw that in several debates where it took some time to actually get a question to her. I do think the system is afraid of her, definitely, but I could see people walking away in part because of the super PAC change. But then again, like you pointed out, when people have decided this is my candidate, they want to go for it. And so I don't know if it's an ideology thing, or the reality that people are gonna almost default to their let's get a white male to run the show, or at least the male?
I don't know though. I mean, I think that she really, when she was successful, she was running as a strong progressive, and then she hired the Obama people, the establishment types, and she veered away from that, went after Bernie Sanders for dubious claims of sexism, and it was also at the same time that she was backing away from Medicare for All, and she saw her poll numbers tank. She could have talked about how it's important to have female representation, at the same time buttressing it with a progressive agenda, and she backed away from it a little, and I think she's in no man's land now, and people don't really know what to think of it.
That's a good point.
I think that, these are just hypotheticals. I think that we have an idea, a story of what her campaign has been so far, what has caused her rise at a particular point, what has caused her descent, and I think it's likely right, but it's not necessarily right. I mean, look, she rose 6 months ago, 7 months ago, at a time when she was releasing all of these progressive policy proposals that were incredibly detailed and all that. And so it is possible that that is what caused people to think, oh wait, she's a serious progressive, I'm gonna support her. I think that that's something like the narrative that most people believe. But that's not necessarily why people started to follow her. It could be that putting those out made people think that she was serious and competent and intelligent and electable. And so leaving a progressive platform behind wouldn't necessarily turn those people off if that wasn't what caused them to follow her. Also, she got much more news coverage when she was putting out those plans. It's possible it was just people took a look at her, name recognition went up, that sort of thing. And so we don't know for sure. I would say to Emma's point, look, obviously I don't support her, and I support her less than I did back when she started to move away from those positions. But I think there are some people who, it's a combination of ideology and a variety of different sort of demographic desires and things like that. I think there are people who love AOC who hate Bernie Sanders and don't see that as inconsistent on the policy. Those people could like Elizabeth Warren. There's some people who are just never gonna accept Bernie Sanders.
That's a lot of people that like Elizabeth Warren, and that's what's frustrating when I go to her events, even though I know that she has a progressive voting record in the Senate, her base and the people that were voting for her, from what I saw, were further right than her. And I think those are the people that have remained, as opposed to the progressives that came over when she was leading in the polls and she was running again on a progressive platform. She fell apart in that instance. And also you touched on a really important point there, John, that Ryan Grimm pointed out to me, and it's backed by polling data. When people, her base of support, it seems to be is a upper middle class, professional managerial class, a lot of times on the coast. And their number one voting priority is getting Donald Trump out of office. And when people saw that she polls not as well versus Trump as Bernie Sanders, as Joe Biden, even as Mike Bloomberg, even though I think that's hot air, then they left.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And I think that that's backed up by the data. And then she kind of didn't know what to do. And she turned to old school consultants, and I think made horrible errors, and this is where we are.
Yeah, I think sometimes that division, one second, John. Sometimes that division, like the pushback, sometimes it sparks some people to dig in further. You were talking about the AOC versus a Bernie thing. So there's some people who are turned off by Bernie and have no idea what the policies are, or do have an idea what the policies are, but think it's okay. I'm just upset that some of his supporters act like this, and so that just turns them off. So even some of the pushback that Elizabeth Warren is getting from the back and forth on her super PAC support, sometimes it could garner support oddly, the same way that she loses support because of it, because people may come at her and then people start going, oh my God, you're coming at this one of the main figures, potential front runner, and not right now, but for the Democratic nomination, you're just gonna attack this woman? And sometimes people get that as an identity connection. I'm sure a lot of people in America will look up and go, they keep treating Elizabeth Warren like this. How dare these progressives do such a thing? You know what, I'm in for her even more. And we'll overlook the PAC because that's less important to them than the anger and the vitriol sometimes that can come online. It's different reasons people vote, and you can't plan for that part, but there's probably a decent percentage, I think, that do that. People overlooked a lot of things Hillary Clinton did because they're like, oh, identify, I wanna see this, glass ceiling. They love that part. And sometimes that's the main draw.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.